Welcome back to the follow-up section of the Unreal Engine for Dummies course. Now in this section, it's going to be more for the upper end intermediate, but it doesn't mean as a beginner you can't follow this section. So the reason why this section isn't really for dummies anymore is because the multi-switch section will require the understanding of recursion, which is one of the most powerful concepts and also one of the harder concepts to understand in the world of programming. Alright, so in order to proceed, we need to think about how our old system actually works, just to revise, So we have the mouse, we tell the switch to turn off by clicking it. The switch is on, that opens the lid is open. We tell the arm, hey, we have a switch, can you turn it off? And then by using the collision, we turn off the switch. And then now the switch is off, so the arm can go back to its resting position. Now the lid can close. So as you can see, it's a rather simple system in the big picture sense. Of course, we have some edge cases, which is difficult, but the recursive system isn't going to be so simple. All right, so this is what the recursive system will look like with the multiple switches. What you really have to understand is that there are going to be two different parts. The first one here is going to be the inner thing here, which will basically dictate the start and stop condition of the recursive loop. And the outer loop here itself is where the recursion is going to be happening. Now, if you don't know what recursion is, basically it's just functions that are going to be calling itself continuously, right? And it will keep running that function until a certain condition is met. And for our case, it means all the switches are off, then it is allowed to stop, and that's where the loop stops, okay? But let's start from the beginning, and I will walk you through how the process will work, starting from the mouse. Okay, let's start from the beginning here. We can now, of course, click on not only one switch, but multiple switches. And every time a switch is switched on or off, that will trigger an update state. So we just tell the state machine how the switches are looking, right? And if one or more switches are turned on, we allow this thing to open. That will start the loop, because now it will go here and the arm will start to turn off the first switch. If there are more than one switch, what's going to happen? Well, it will continue, right? And go to the next switch. And basically it will keep doing it until it arrives here and it switches off the last switch. And that will basically tell the state machine, oh, wait, we have no more switches anymore. So now it meets the close condition or the stop condition. So we'll go to the arm here, tell it to retract to its rest position, and after that, we just basically tell it the lid to close, and that's basically the end of our process. So as I explained it to you, it might feel rather simple, but when we actually get to implementing it, it can actually become quite difficult. On top of that, we also have to handle the edge cases again as well. And so to make sure that we have a good image in our head before we implement this thing in blueprints, let's go back to the CodeSight editor and update our node graph. All right, so let's get back into CodeSight. If you're using this outside of courses, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, there are some updates that I made that should make using it much easier and more fluid. So first of all, I'm just going to add in a class here, and there's now a thing called a text node. Now there's some bugs still. I can't actually drag the text. I just have to go in here and just delete it. And for example, now with this, you can make note of things that are outside of Unreal Engine. So of course you can do something like Touch Designer, and then add another one here. And then I'm just going to Control A and do Ableton, for example, right? And I'll just add in the function, and you can see here that you can connect it up like this, so you can visualize things outside of blueprints. And also there is here a screenshot graph button, which if you click this, you will download basically a screenshot, a JPEG of this canvas window here, which is much easier than manually screenshotting with your keyboard, of course. So that's that. And also one more thing is if you click on any of the nodes and you have this kind of up in the sidebar, you can just press delete and delete it now. Before you had to actually do this, which was nonsense. But anyways, those are the updates. Let's load the old graph that we had of the single switch implementation. All right, so you should have the old graph loaded up right now. And so what I'm going to do is to move these over here, actually, because we might need to use it later. So I'm going to bring these on top. Okay, and that's fine. I'm going to get rid of this one using the delete key and get rid of all of these here, as well as this one, and introduce our state machine. I'm just going to drop these down. And so, of course, anytime a switch state is updated by turning it on or off, we have to tell the state machine what's up, right? And we keep track of that with an array of BP switches. And I think we probably should be using Boolean, right? Because the state of each switch is basically just 0, 1, or true or false. And if there are more than one switch on, that means that we can open the lid. And actually, I think we need to have a new variable. So let's add in a new variable, which is going to be of type Boolean. And I believe it's called system engaged. So more than one switch, system is considered engaged. That will start the open lid. After this is business as usual. So let me just move this over. That's going to go back into here. It's going to hit the switch. And the difference is that there are going to be more than one switches. And so we need to introduce the recursive loop. And if you remember, that's going to be from the switch to the arm, right? And so the loop is just going to be here, and it's just going to keep running over and over again until the state machine realizes that, hey, there are no on switches anymore. That means what? Now the arm can go back to its rest position. I'm going to add in a waypoint here. Okay, I don't like this. There you go. And business as usual, we tell the lid to close, and that's the end of the loop. And it looks quite simple, I would say, but the actual implementation is going to be quite difficult in my opinion. And that's why I said it's kind of advanced, right? And so as you see, that's ready. So what we can do, I would say, is take a screenshot and then just download that for future usage and to refer back to it. But that's it for the CodeSight. We can move back into Unreal Engine. All right, so you should have Unreal Engine open right now. And before we get into the multiple switch kind of stuff, I want to do a recursion practice for those who need an introduction. And so basically in Unreal Engine, it would be having a function and inside that function calling the same function, which will create an infinite loop. And it can also be an event. So you call an event, and in the same execution chain, you call the event once again, and that turns into an infinite loop. Now, the difference between a recursion loop and an infinite loop is that you have some kind of condition that will make the loop stop, right? And so once that condition is met, the loop finishes. And so I want to do that practice. So let's make a new folder for that. And I'm going to call it, I don't know, practice. There you go. And dive into here, make a new level, map 2. All right. I'm going to enter and save. Let's make a new blueprint and actor, BP recursive prac, maybe. Enter that. Let's move this over here. Okay, it's not letting me do it. Okay. So in the event graph, get rid of that. Let's make a custom event. And we'll call it recursive loop. Okay, and so that's that. And to make it an infinite loop, we just call itself again, recursive loop. There you go. That's an infinite loop, right? And if you try to do this, what's going to happen is that Unreal Engine will say, oh, wait, there's an infinite loop. We have to stop the program. And so it won't let you do anything. And so to let you do something, you need to make a delay or some kind of thing that will allow you to have a bit of pause in between the calls, and that can also be a timeline, right? So you could have a timeline, have an animation, and when the animation finishes, call itself. That's another way, right? And so this is still an infinite loop, but delayed. I'm going to make it like 0.05 seconds, and to turn it into a recursion, we just have to have a condition. So hold down B and click, put a branch here. And so, okay, don't connect that yet. So condition, I'm going to promote it. So condition is met, question mark. And if it's not met, I want to keep looping. So do that here. And if it's met, we can probably just print string and say success. Success. There you go. And so what we need to do is to add stuff in that will allow us to meet the condition, which I can just drag here. And so we put stuff here, and if the condition is met, we set it to true. And once it comes around, it will just stop the loop over here. And so let's work on the stuff in the middle. And before we do that, I'm going to compile and save. All right, so let's work on the single condition method. And for that, I think using numbers is the easiest. So let's do a random integer or float in range. No, float, that's fine. 0 to 1 is fine. And I'm going to make a new variable called total. I'm going to connect this here. And this itself isn't going to be very useful. But if I add total to itself, so get that and do a plus, there you go. Do that and do that, right? And in order to meet the condition, we can probably say if the total is greater than 0. Sorry, greater than 10, for example, right? And if that's true, the condition is met. So that's a very basic single condition, right? And I also want to print out this number, so I'm going to print string once again. And I'm going to make this one, let's just say 0.5 seconds, and get rid of this and plug this into here. That should be okay. And let's make this one maybe like 0.5 seconds as well, but red. Okay, so that's that. And we can probably test this right now. And so we are not engaging the loop anywhere right now. So we can call this at event begin play. So I'm going to duplicate that here. Let's compile and save this. Drop this into here and let's play. Oh, what the heck? That's because the default value is true and it has to be set to false. Okay, let's do that. Success. There you go. And because the random number is generating different increments of numbers every time, the time it takes for it to reach the 2/10 is going to be different every single time. And so this kind of creates a very simple, emergent behavior. And the whole trick with Unreal Engine or kind of like generative art stuff is that you keep stacking very simple rules and it creates very like organic behavior, right? And this is kind of like super one-dimensional organic behavior, but that's how it is. And in fact, what we can do is measure how many seconds it takes. And so basically, I think we just do game seconds here. And we'll just save the start time. And then basically, I think here, when we're done, we need to calculate the current time minus the start time. So current time minus start time. So let's say minus. All right, and let's feed this into here and maybe give it a different color so we can see. Maybe something yellowish is fine. Right, and maybe we do 1 second because it's a little hard to see. All right, so that should be fine. Okay, let's play this. There you go, 1.3 seconds. 1.4 seconds. And let's see, 1.4 seconds. Okay, Maybe the random float value isn't the best, but you get the point now, right? All right, so we've covered the single condition recursion. We should work on adding a secondary condition. And so how about that? Not only does it have to be greater than 10, but also the complete time also has to be less than 1.3 seconds, and it's called a success, right? And so now we can't call this success here anymore, right? And so that's going to be here. Also, we need to change the condition met difference. So the condition met is no longer going to be that, and it's going to be, I don't know, number loop, right? Number loop done. So number loop done is here, and we need to make another one here. So a second one, so condition is met, question mark, right? And so now the loop is going to have a second layer or a second stage. And so once this number loop is finished, we will see if the condition is met. So we need to set this, yeah. And let's just see here. So now this start time, this final result is less than 1.3 seconds. We can call this one here, right? The condition is met. And we should see if the condition is not met. We're going to start the recursive loop once again. Before we do that, actually, before we restart the loop, we need to set the total to 0. So that's very important. Also, the number loop done is going to be false. So if the condition isn't met, right, so that's that. And we restart the loop. Okay, so that boom comes back here and does this thing, dun, 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 dun. If this loop is done, it's going to go here. And it's going to check if the seconds is within 1.3 seconds. And if it's met, we can call it the success, right? Which is down here. That's considering two conditions. Okay, so that should be fine. So I think I need to add another message. So restart loop. And for this color, we need maybe something greenish, right? All right, let's run this, see how it works. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Every time we start this, we need to change the start time, which was very, very stupid of me, which has to be done here. Okay, so that's gonna be it. All right. Compile, save that. Okay, now it should work. There you go. So it took about 3 rounds of the loop to get to less than 1.3 seconds with 2 different conditions. Now, if you want to continue learning about recursion outside of this course and you want other examples, I actually highly recommend that you take this course, the OG course, my first course that I've ever made with Unreal Engine. And this is recursion done in 2 different dimensions, and it creates a very beautiful effect. And you might be thinking, oh man, it's UE4, what am I going to do? I don't want to install it. No, literally you can, on that series, you can use UE5 and follow this course perfectly. And there is no difference, basically no difference of the blueprint workflow from UE4 to UE5. Barely ever changed. Like the only change I would say is that when we get a vector, well, I'll just show you. So I get a vector here, right? And there used to be different kinds of multiply nodes, but now it's just a single multiply. And you just do right click to change it to a float, right? But before we had like a vector to float multiply node, and that's it. That's the difference, right? And so if you haven't taken that course, I highly recommend you to do that. And yeah, let's continue with the multiple switch stuff then. Now that's it for the free portion of the You Suck at Blueprints course. And if you want to continue with the intermediate to advanced section, visit interact.live and access not only this course, but over 13 hours of learning content for interactive art and installations in Unreal Engine.